Hi folks, it's Mike, PC31, the Vinyl Policeman. I've recently acquired I've finalised my collection of the KINKS 24 studio albums. Been tracking down the last 2 or 3 for a while now, and I've now got all 24. So I thought, inspired by Richard McCook, who always does great rankings videos, I thought I'd have a go at a ranking video, and I'll do one for the KINKS. I've excluded all compilation albums, live albums, solo albums, so there's no Wonderful KINKS Chronicles or Great Lost Album, One for the Road, To the Bone, etc, etc. I definitely had preconceptions on what were the best albums, what were the worst albums. So what I've done is, over the last 2.5 days or so, I've re-listened to all 24 albums, and I've listened to them in chronological order to get a real feel of how things happen for the KINKS. Also, I play in a KINKS tribute band, so I'm very familiar with all the singles and a lot of the album tracks, but for me this is a deep dive into the whole KINKS canon as well, all the studio albums. You will disagree with the ranking, as we all do with these things, so it would be great if you commented and tell me what you think. There are a few shocks. I mean, there are a few shocks for me as I went through. I didn't expect some to rank as highly for me, and I didn't expect some to rank as low, so you know, interesting in that respect. It's quite difficult with the KINKS because the periods are so different, so it's quite hard to compare. I mean, I think there's 5 major periods for the KINKS. You've got the early mid-60s, the Shout Army production time. You've then got the mid-60s, early 70s, the Concepts, still on Pi and Reprise. You've then got the 70s, the RCA years, the very theatrical period you went through, very different to those early ones. You've then got the 77 to 84, the Arista years, where they're producing arena rock kind of albums. You've got the 86 to 93, which is the final hurrah, the MCA London Columbia years with the final albums. And you've got one album which doesn't fit into any of those 5 categories, which you'll see come up in the 24. I'd love to hear your comments, your view. Love to see your ranking as well, if you put it in the comments. I expect this video to probably be about, I'll keep it as short as possible, but I expect it probably to be about 45 minute-ish. So in the comments below, what I've done is I've actually put timing. So if you want to join it at just the 24 and not have all this preamble, if you want the 20, the 15, 10, 5, I'll actually put in the times so you can jump straight to that. I obviously want you to watch it all if you've got the time. So please please give it a like if you like it, and as I say, please comment. So this is my 24. So coming in at 24, Everybody's in Showbiz. So from 1972, their 11th album, and this is the second on RCA. This was a real transition album because the KINKS were Ray Davies were getting the KINKS ready for the theatrical phase. So it's a double album, so studio on the first side, live recording from a couple of nights at Carnegie Hall on the second side. But it's a decent production on the album. Ray Davies produced it. The live album's a very strange one. It's very camped up, very vaudeville. The only 2 big tracks for me, which I think are good, are Celluloid Heroes and Supersonic Rocket Ship. And there's some duffers with Hot Potatoes and Motorway. I think they're pretty poor tracks. So all about the monotony of touring, but I would actually rate this one at 24. 23 is one of those deep theatrical ones, and I know some people absolutely love this album. This is Preservation Act number 2, so this was the 13th in the canon. 1974, the 4th RCA album, reached number 114 on the Billboard. Pure musical theatre. Reading the reviews, it worked really well live. There were some great shows from it, but I think it's quite a difficult listen on vinyl. Double album. Money Talks, great track. Artificial Man, there are some good ones on it. I think it's one of those albums where if you took it to a desert island and really kind of studied it, for me, an album like Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which every time you listen to it, you get more and more from it, and I love that album. This is probably one of those albums I haven't devoted enough time to, and this would probably grow on me if I really, really put a lot of time in it, but it's not an instant one. Double album, so that's number 23 for me. Number 22 is from the year before, 1973, is Preservation Act 1, which only reached 177 on the US Billboard. Again, pure musical theatre. It was the precursor to Act 2. This is the softer one of the two. Act 2 becomes a little bit harsher, but a couple of great tracks on it, Sitting in the Midday Sun and Sweet Lady Genevieve, which I know a lot of people like, and it is a terrific track. Cricket, Music Hall song, Morning Song, the opener, is a beautiful one. But it's pure musical theatre, very clever, but musically I don't think it's that strong. But that's from 1973, and that's number 22 for me. The next one is the 5th RCA record, which again, musical theatre. This one, soap opera, 1975, and this is an album which is kind of much easier to get than Preservation Act 1 or Act 2, because it's a very, very simple plot, where you've got a superstar musician who changes roles with a guy called Norman, but then the superstar guy, could be Ray Davis, actually goes with Norman's wife, gets into the routine and just kind of stays there. It's kind of 50s rock and roll, glam rock, very reminiscent. Where it's 1975, in the UK you had some really big soap operas, Coronation Street, Crossroads, and this is kind of, I think, very much influenced by that. Just interesting enough, so Ray Davis, just made a quick note here, Ray Davis said, "People are starting to lose faith in my ideas." Dave Davis said at the same time, "I fear this could be the end of the Kinks," and he said, "I thought it was an exercise in Ray disappearing up his own arse." So Dave wasn't very impressed. But there's some good tracks on it. Star Maker, Holiday Romance is a good one. Ducks of the War's quite good. But yeah, there's a few good ones on it. You Can't Stop the Music, there's another quite good one. So it's a pleasant album. Plot's much easier to follow. There's a live album of this as well, which came out fairly recently, and I've got that. But that's number 21 for me. We then go into this last phase I was telling you about, the MCA in US, London and the UK. But this is the penultimate album for the Kinks, 1989, their 23rd album. And this was the first time in 15 years that an album had dropped out of the Billboard 100. This only reached 122. There's no Ian Gibbons in this one on keyboard, he disappeared. No Mick Avery on drums, who had been with them forever. It was Jim Rodford on bass, terrific bass player, and Bob Hewitt on Henwright on drums. Lots of fillers. Down All the Days is a good track. How Do I Get Close really reminds me of Bruce Springsteen, Darkness on the Edge of Town, and even the guitar solo in that is very reminiscent of Darkness on the Edge of Town for me, which is my favourite Bruce album, so that's not a bad thing. War Is Over, UK Jive track on it is fun. It's an okay album, but it's number 20 for me. So number 19, Think Visual. This was the third to last album, the first album after they'd moved away from Arista. This is the first album with MCA and London. 1986. Production on this is a lot warmer than the arena rock ones have been a few years before. It's quite good in that respect. But it's very AOR, it's very radio friendly. It's an okay album. Some quite good tracks on it, actually. I mean, Welcome to Sleazy Town, I really like that. Lost and Found is a good track. Working at the Factory, again, is very Bruce Springsteen, actually. Rock and Roll, How Are You? So there's some decent tracks on it. Funny thing about this one as well, so Ray Davies had gone through that phase of all the theatrical albums which didn't sell very well at all, and that was all through the RCA years. They went to Arista, and you got all the arena rock albums. Left Arista, went on to MCA, and immediately Ray pitched a new concept, and he wanted the Spiv from the Come Dancing video to run a video shop in London, and then to be hit by a thunderbolt and to get some magical powers. And MCA said no. MCA said, just make a good album, tour it and sell t-shirts, that's all we want. So it was free any of that concept in that respect. But it's, as I say, it's a warmer production. It's an okay album. It's pleasant to listen to. It's probably be a grower actually. So that's number 19, Think Visual. Next one is an album which I've always had a bit of a soft spot for. Rob Walker showed this one recently actually, and that's number 18 for me, is Percy, the soundtrack from the film. And it was the final Pie album, Reprise. KINKS started off on Pie in 1964 and Reprise in the States, and this was the very final one that they did with them. As I say, soundtrack to the film. Dave Davies said there was so much good material wasted on such an awful project. The production, bit muddy, bit rushed, you can kind of sense that. But for me, the first side of this album is really good, and I think it's very enjoyable. The second side, very weak, very incidental music, and probably in the context of the film, great, but not for a KINKS album on its own. Track one, side one, God's Children, one of Ray Davies' best, an absolutely fantastic track. Second track, Lola, an instrumental, where John Gosling does an organ, plays the organ melody line for the lead vocal line, and it's really good, I think. The Way Love Used to Be is a good track. Completely is a really slow blues track, so for all those guitarists out there, if you want to practice playing a pentatonic solo in G, put on that track and play along with it. It's really good. Moments is a good track. So side one, really good, I think. God's Children, superb. Side two, filler. So 1971 album, so it's number 18 for me. Number 17 for me is the KINKS' second album, and this would definitely figure higher on a lot of people's rankings, but it doesn't for me. I mean, apparently, I've heard it said, or I've read it, that it's Ray Davies' least favourite album. The whole thing was recorded in 3 days, and it was then out within 3 weeks, so everything was very, very rushed. They just come off a tour. This was the second album, Pie Reprise, and Shoutami's still the producer at this stage. And there's some absolutely dreadful covers on this album which pull it down so much. I mean, the cover of Dancing in the Street, Martha and the Vandellas, is awful. Nagging Woman, dreadful cover. But what you've got on it is Look For Me Baby, which is very Beatles-esque, which I think is a great track. Nothing in This World Can Stop Me Worrying About That Girl, superb track. Tired of Waiting, magnificent. Wonder Where My Baby Is Tonight. But the interesting thing about this one is that if at the same time the singles that are out were Set Me Free, the sublime See My Friends, Well Respected Man, Everybody's Gonna Be Happy. I mean, just imagine if all of those singles, as every band would do from the 70s onwards, or the late 60s onwards, to include all of your singles on your next album coming out. If they'd have all been on here, this would have been an absolute masterpiece. But there's just too much filler, some dreadful covers, as I say. Made number 3 in the UK, number 60 in the US Billboard. But for me, it's number 17. Kind of KINKS from 1965. The next one I think is the best of the RCA theatrical concept albums, Schoolboys in Disgrace. This is from 1975, their 15th album. As I say, the sixth and last RCA album, and I think RCA had been incredibly patient with the KINKS, with all the preservations, etc., which hadn't sold at all, and were quite indulgent for Ray Davies. But This one I think is quite a strong album. Side 1 is very kind of rock and roll, very quite 50s rock and roll. Side 2 is more of what's to come. It's more arena rock, less tied into the main story. And you think that this particular album is at the same time as Grease, Happy Days, Darts, the band, John Lennon's rock and roll album, where he went back to the 50s rock and roll tracks. So the other thing to say about this actually is that the artwork, which I think is truly appalling, NME, they actually selected this. I think this was in their top 50 list of the most piss poor covers of all times. And I think they're probably right. Ray Davies, after this album was made, actually moves to the US. So then we go into this Arista phase with the arena rock. So this is the last of that particular genre. So number 16 for me, Schoolboys in Disgrace. And so there are some good tracks on it, I must say. It's an album that I do like, and I think it's the best of the theatrical ones for me. We then now move into my first of the arena rock phase, and that's State of Confusion. And again, some will have this album a lot higher, but it's a little bit disappointing for me because I think it could have been so much better. This is at a time, this is the 5th of 6 albums that the KINKS did for Arista, and I think one of the absolute key figures in KINKS history is Clive Davis, the head honcho at Arista, because he was the one who basically said to him, you know, I'm signing you, but I want no more concepts. I want to look at the demos, and he really kind of made them very focused on going into that more arena kind of rock non-concept. So with this one, so this is very AOR, disappointing to say compared to the other arena rock albums. You've got the breakup of Chrissie Hynde going on during this, but you've got Come Dancing on it, great track. Don't Forget to Dance, State of Confusion is a really good track. And the other one I quite like, yeah, Clichés of the World, B-Movie. Great guitar riff from Dave Davis, lyrics are not that great. But State of Confusion got to number 12 in the US Billboard, so really successful. And by the way, all of these later albums are doing nothing outside of the US. It's amazing actually. But from 1983, State of Confusion, number 15 on my rundown, my top 24. The next one is another one from that very same period, Word of Mouth. I've got this as number 14 from 1984, and it was the 6th and the last one for Arista. Chrissie Hynde had actually dumped Ray Davies just before this album. Dave Davis had been dumped by Warner Brothers. His solo album was dumped before they actually released it. So it was a pretty bad time for the KINKS, and it only reached number 57 in the US Billboard. So they were definitely out of favour at the time. And this is 1984. But there's some good tracks on it. Good Day, about Diana Dawes. Do It Again, absolutely great track. I think that's brilliant. That's the one with the big chord to open, like Hard Day's Night. Summer's Gone was released in the US only, and the best track on the album for me, Living on a Thin Line, one of Dave Davis's tracks. And Dave Davis actually always did that in his solo shows after the KINKS split up in '96. But it's a decent album. So the last of the Arista albums, 1984, but it's number 14 for me. Next album is very contentious because this is near the bottom of the list. I've seen a lot of people place this near the bottom of the list, but I think this is a fantastic album. The last KINKS album, Phobia, and this is one of the last albums I was trying to track down actually, from 1993, the last album they made, and it's the only album they made with Columbia. KONK goes digital at the time, KONK Studios, where they did most of their recordings, and so you've got a situation where Ray Davies can just spend all the time in the world adding tracks to songs. Some demos had 100 tracks on them. They were just absolutely vast. Dave Davis is living in LA, so he's at a distance. But what comes out of this are some absolutely fantastic rock tracks. And I'm going to get to what a lot of people consider to be the Kinks' heaviest rock album, but this is also a really heavy rock album. The problem with this album is the CD age. This is 1993, so 17 tracks, 76 minutes. It's just far too long. You could easily take 5, 6, 7 tracks off this, and then you would have an absolutely magnificent album to finish. Some of the tracks on it: Only a Dream, Wall of Fire is superb. Somebody Stole My Car, it's the Stones, Pure Stones, is superb. The Informer, great track. Drift Away, great track. And Scattered is a track that Ray and Dave dedicated to their mum, and it's the last track on the last album, so quite poignant, quite fitting. But also with this, some people knock the production, but I think the production is terrific. Big rock album. And when you think who was involved with it, I mean, Bob Clearmountain, Springsteen, think of all the Springsteen albums that he's mixed. Bob Clearmountain and John Rollo actually mixed it, so two massive heavyweights. And it was actually mastered by Bob Ludwig, Zeppelin, Queen, McCartney, Nirvana, Lou Reed, absolutely superb. And you can hear it, it's fantastic. So this is the very last album, and if you can get a hold of the CD, folks, and give it a listen, just stay with it. As I say, if this was 11, 12 tracks, I mean, I think an optimum album should be 10, 11 tracks, and it should be between 35 and 40 minutes. And if it's a great album, you just play it again. And some of the greatest albums ever are that sort of time. At 76 minutes, it's just too long. But it's a good album with some great tracks. So that's number 13 for me, Phobia from 1993. So that was the last Kinks album. We now move to the first Kinks album, and I've rated this at number 12 from 1964. The original 4 obviously members are on it, kind of thing. But you think at this time, so Mick Avery drums, Peter Craig bass, Ray Davis were all 20. Dave Davis was 17, so they were really kind of young men at the time. But on this album, You Really Got Me. So it just says it all. I mean, without You Really Got Me, I wouldn't be doing this. There would be no Kinks, and that's the actual single that really broke them, and it's on the album. Also in this, you've got Stop Your Sobbing, which the Pretenders took in the 80s and made it a really famous, huge single. But it's interesting because a lot of people also say that Jimmy Page played the solo and You Really Got Me, which he didn't. But Jimmy Page actually played rhythm guitar on this album all the way through because Ray wanted to concentrate on just the singing. But all the solos, all the fancy stuff is Dave Davis. I mean, that You Really Got Me sound, I mean, for me, that is the first punk guitar you ever hear is Dave Davis and You Really Got Me, and it's influenced just so many people thereafter. But problem with this album, reason why I've got it at 12 and not higher, is there is a lot of filler, there's a lot of bad covers, not such great covers. There's some good ones, but there's a lot of bad ones. And I think a lot of that's down to Shout Army, what he actually put on there. UK reached number 3, US reached number 29. So 1964, first Kinks album, number 12 for me. Then I've got the third Kinks album, Kinks Controversy from 1965. And so Ray wrote all of these ones on the third album, except for one cover which opens the album, so Milk Cow Blues, Sleepy John Estes. But the tracks on this album, and the reason why it's number 11 for me, although there's quite a lot of filler, Where Have All the Good Times Gone, just an absolute classic, covered by Bowie, many others. Till the End of the Day, fantastic track. I'm on an Island, absolutely love that track. Ring the Bells, It's Too Late. So there's some excellent tracks on it, but there's still filler on it, and the production isn't that great, I don't think. And during the summer of '65, so when this actually came out, this is when the Kinks got themselves banned in the US, and so things really start to change in Ray Davis's songwriting as a result of that ban in the US. Just one of those key moments in kink history. So number 11, Kinks Controversy. So we now hit the big 10, and I know you already disagree with me so much, but that's not a problem. So second of the Arista albums, so the arena rock phase, Arista, and this is from 1978. So very warm production on this album. No killer tracks though, so it's a really enjoyable album, and I've got a feeling this is one of those albums with me which the more I listen to it, I think it's going to get stronger and stronger. But as I say, no killer tracks, but it's a very, very solid album. I mean, Permanent Waves is a good track. Live Life is a good track. Black Messiah is good. Live Life is a really good rock arena track. So it feels a bit to me like Warren Zevon, Steve Miller-ish. It feels that kind of album. So it's a solid album, but without any huge stand-ups, and that reached number 40 in the US Billboard. So from 1978, my number 10. We've entered the big number 10. Number 9 for me is Lola and the Power Man. Obviously some fantastic tracks on here which everybody knows about. I mean, Lola, 8 Man. But although they are great tracks, and I love both of those, This Time Tomorrow I think is a superb track. But my favourite track on the album is the Dave Davis one, Strangers. I think that's the second track on the album. I think it's magnificent. But there's still filler for me on this album. I don't think it's a consistent album throughout, and it's always been a little bit of a disappointment to me. It's one of those albums which I always think when I put it on, this is what a classic Kinks album, and it just falls short for me. So that's why it's only reached number 9, although there's some fantastic tracks on there. The door is now open with the US again, because April '69, so Ray Davis renegotiated the deal with the American Musicians Union, and so they're back on tour again, so they're touring this album. This album's quite a bitter album, because at the time Ray Davis was very much against the music industry. Agents, promoters, managers, publishers still owed a fortune. They hadn't been paid money since the mid-60s from publishing, so there's a lot of bitterness on it. There's one little quote I jotted down actually in Denmark Street, where Ray Davis is talking about Dick Rowe, the A&R man from Decca who famously turned down the Beatles. And in the actual song Denmark Street, he puts, "I hate your music, your hair's too long, but I'll sign you up because I'd hate to be wrong." You know, classic Ray Davis lyrics. 1970 reached US Billboard 35, and the 8th Kinks album, but it's number 9 for me in my ranking. Number 8 is another Arista arena album, Low Budget. Now before I started this exercise and re-listened to everything and compared them to other albums, I thought this was going to be a lot higher, but it just slipped a little bit for me. It's the 3rd Arista album, and it's the Kinks' biggest seller in the US. This is the biggest album. It reached number 11 on the Billboard. Recorded in New York, so where most of the Kinks stuff is recorded at KINKS Studios, their own studios in North London. This was New York, but it's very punk, new wave, it's raw. Clive Davis, head honcho at Arista, has now gotten into much bigger arenas. They've gone from kind of, you know, kitchen sink dramas to bigger things, you know, strikes, inflation, winter of discontent in the UK. And the songs on this one, I mean, I Wish I Could Fly Like Superman, fantastic live track. Gallon of Gas, Catch Me Now I'm Falling, another great live track. Moving Pictures, Pressure, punk, Attitude, punk. And Low Budget, great arena track. 6 of the 11 tracks on Low Budget is actually on the One for the Road, brilliant live double album from 1980. So really good album. Few tracks, a bit short, but there's some big arena rock songs on this album. Really good album. Another appalling cover though, in my opinion. Next up, This album figures very, very highly with a lot of people, and it's number 7 for me, so it's figuring really highly for me. But something else, 1967. So this was the 5th album, and this is one with the previous one, Face to Face. That's the 4th album. That's actually got Ray Davies for the first time doing the musical direction, doing the production effectively. And Shoutami is just doing the recording, so he's a recording engineer. This is the first one where actually on the credits Ray Davies is producing it for the first time, and it's a really, really good album. No covers on it at all, which I think is the first time with the Kinks. And Waterloo Sunset, which Ray said, like McCartney's Yesterday, Ray said it came to him in a dream. Dave Watts, which a jam later recorded in the 80s, fantastic. Death of a Clown, co-write with Dave Davis, which Dave sings, fantastic. And a Dave Davis song I absolutely love, Love Me Till the Sun Shines, which again Dave Davis does in a lot of his solo work. Absolutely fantastic. So really good album. Reached number 35 in the UK, reached 153 in the US Billboard. But I think it's a very strong album. It's number 7 for me in my rundown. Number 6 is a very, very important album, I believe, and that is Streetwalker. And I think the reason why this is so important is because it came out 1977, front end of punk. But when you think just before this, the Kinks with RCA had just come off all of those theatrical albums which hadn't sold that well, and so they then leave Arista, and they're signed up, as I say, by Clive Davis, head man of Arista. And he, as I mentioned earlier, he said, okay, no concepts, it's got to be radio friendly, and I want to listen and approve the demos beforehand. So this really is the rebirth of the Kinks. So this is the first arena rock album of the 6 Arista albums that they make. The horns have gone, where there was lots of horns, brass in all the theatrical ones. They've gone from this. So Ray Davies, for the first time in a while, not that he necessarily wants it, but for the first time in a while, he's free of concepts and he can just write great material. So on this one, you've got Sleepwalker, great track. Jukebox Music, really good track. Life Goes On, fantastic. Program in the UK, Old Grey Whistle Test. It was played on that, and I've seen that just hundreds of times, and it's such a good, they play it so well live. But my really big track from this one is Brother, which I think is a magnificent Kinks track. So this is number 6 for me from 1977. 16th in the canon, reached number 21 in the US Billboard, but it's number 6 for me. So we now enter the top 5. And number 5 is, in my opinion, for 1982, the best arena rock album. And a lot of people say that this is the hardest rock album the Kinks made. I think Phobia comes really close to it as well, actually, but this is a hard rock album, and it's a magnificent album. It really is. And again, no more kitchen dramas now. You've got songs about serial killers, wife beaters. It's a nasty album in that respect. But the songs on it, Better Days, Destroyer, fantastic. Predictable, Yo-Yo, Around the Dial opens the album. Give the People What They Want, Add It Up, Back to Front, which could be AC/DC, fantastic track. Killer's Eyes. Chrissy Hynde actually sang backing vocals on this one as well. But for 1982, for me, that's a hard rocker, the best from the Arista period, from those 6 albums. And I think this is a fantastic album. I absolutely love this album. That's number 5. Number 4 is the 4th Kinks album from 1966. Or Whereas Schoolboys in Disgrace is the Kinks covers I don't think are great at all. I mean, they're not like Floyd, Beatles. There's no Hypnosis going on here. But for me, this is the best Kinks album from 1966. And you think this is the same time as Revolver and Pet Sounds. Reached number 12 in the UK, 136 on the Billboard. Musical direction, as I said earlier, Ray Davies, Shout Army takes a backstreet, just does the recording. I think this is the first great KINKS album, the fourth album. No filler on this one, no covers on this one actually, on the fourth album. Sunny Afternoon, Too Much on My Mind, beautiful. You're Looking Fine, Dandy, and my favourite track on the album is Fancy, which is like an Indian drone. It's a really atmospheric, fantastic track. And again, singles at the same time this was released: Dedicated Follower of Fashion, Dead End Street. Just imagine if they'd have been on this album. Absolute masterpiece. I think it probably is anyway, actually. It's a great album, Face to Face from 1966. Number 3. My number 3 has been playing in the background actually, and I just love this album as well. This is superb. Muswell Hillbillies, just a fantastic album from 1971. This is the one when I at the outset in the preamble where I said there's one album which doesn't fit any of the 5 categories, and I think that this is the one. This is the first album for RCA, and after they left Pie and Reprise. It's just hard to put in any category. There's country rock, there's folk, there's roots, Americana, there's music hall, there's folk. Ray Davies said it was like a comedy album, and it's all about the frustrations of modern life. A fantastic album from 1971. And some of the tracks on it, I mean, 20th Century Man, Skin and Bone, Alcohol, Complicated Life is one of my favourites. I think that's a fantastic track. Here Come the People in Grey, Holloway Jail, Oklahoma, USA, Muswell Hillbillies. Such a strong, underrated album, but for me, this is number 3. So we are now into top 2 range, and I think the only minor shock I've got left for you folks is my order of these two, because my number 2 is from 1968, released the same day as the White Album, 22nd of November 1968. So the KINKS are the Village Green Preservation Society. This is the last album made with the original 4 KINKS, and sold awful at the time, although critics really loved it. And since then, it's become an absolute cult album. It's a fantastic album. Very, very big English concept, or Englishness to it, the Village Green, etc. And again, I think this is born out of the summer of '65 when the KINKS were banned in the US for being so unruly and punch-ups and drunkenness and doing lots of stupid things. When they got banned from touring in the US, which they love to do, Ray Davies retreated into writing very, very English songs, which obviously get more and more. And this one is just such an English album. No filler. There's no big successful single. The 2 singles were Starstruck and Village Green. But when you actually look at the album, every single song for me is superb. No filler at all. Village Green Preservation Society, Do You Remember Water? Superb track. Picture Book, brilliant. Johnny Thunder, and bear in mind this is 5 years before Quadrophenia. You've got a track like Johnny Thunder. Last of the Steam Powered Trains, blues track, superb. Big Sky, maybe my favourite from the album. Such a clever track. Sitting by the Riverside, on and on and on. Superb album, and that's my number 2. And of course, like all of us, on another day, this could swap round. The whole thing could swap round. But my number 1 KINKS album of the 24 studio albums is Arthur, or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire. 1969, same year as Abbey Road, Let It Bleed. Just such an absolutely brilliant album. And one thing I will say about the KINKS, and this kind of applies to everything really, the first 3 albums were produced by Shao Talmy. All the other albums in the canon were produced by Ray Davies, apart from Phobia, which is Ray Davies and Dave Davies. For me, my opinion, just imagine if the KINKS had had a George Martin from the outset. I think they'd be looked at completely different. And the strength of Ray Davies's writing, the musicianship, their originality, their quirkiness, everything. With somebody like a George Martin or somebody at the helm, I think things would have been even more different. So nostalgia, this is a TV sound. It was written as a TV soundtrack, which never happened. And it was during this year, actually, that's right. April '69 is when Ray Davies went to LA just before the making of this album. And he went to LA to produce the Turtles' new album. And that's when he sat down with the powers that be in the American Musicians Union. And they sort of brokered a deal that the Kinks could start appearing on television and touring again. And so he started to feel a lot less inhibited. But this is such a musical masterpiece. And the whole story, which is about Arthur Morgan, which is based on Ray Davies's brother-in-law, his sister Rose's husband, Arthur Anning. And so it's all about Arthur Morgan, everything about him. But the songs of that, I mean, Victoria, opening track, fantastic. Yes Sir, No Sir, Some Mother's Son, a war track, a World War I track, fantastic. Driving, Brainwash, Australia is an epic track. The Run Out of Australia is fantastic. Shangri-La, wow, where Arthur Morgan lives. Mr. Churchill Says, She Bought a Hat Like Princess Marina, Young and Innocent, Nothing to Say, Arthur, a masterpiece. Probably those top 5 albums, in my opinion, are all masterpieces. But for me, at this moment in time, this is the Kinks' greatest studio album. So please comment, folks. We've all got our own opinions, and I'm sure yours are different from mine. But as I say, I hope you enjoyed the ranking. Please sub and like if you did like it, because I intend to do more of these inspired by Richard McCook. But I hope you enjoyed it. That's the 24 studio albums from the Kinks. Thank you.